I have a new guest here. Can you tell me your name and what brings you to JCON?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Eberhard Wolff, and I'm a speaker here at JCON, and I'm happy to be here. I've been here in the last few years, so it's really a great place and a great conference, and I'm happy to be on the show.
Thank you for being here. What's your talk about? As a speaker, you have one topic which is important to you, and that's?
How to measure developer productivity.
How do we start with that? Is it something like the number of tickets solved per sprint?
Yeah, actually, the main point that I'm trying to make is that it's about what you want to measure, why. So, I mean, the number of tickets solved might even be a good idea. The question is, what do you do with that data? So if you try to identify obstacles and remove them, then I think that might be a good idea. But if you try to incentivize people using that metric, it might be a bad idea. And there is even a law called Gotthard's Law. And Gotthard's Law basically says if you manage by some metric, then it ceases to be a good metric. So if you manage by test coverage, for example, people will start to test trivial code, and then test coverage doesn't really tell you whether the tests are good or bad. It just becomes pointless, and therefore you have to be careful about these kinds of things.
Yeah, so if I know that my test coverage should be 100%, I'm just aiming at the test coverage.
Exactly, and then you're basically gaming the system. And that is why I think it's important to figure out what the goal is. And I'm also talking about the space framework, which gives you some ideas about which topics you want to measure or which metrics you want to measure. And the idea is to basically ask the question, okay, so what is it that you care about? What is the problem that you want to get a better understanding about? And then you choose some metrics and figure that out. And I think one of the interesting points is that it's also about developer well-being and how they feel, and I think that is something that is often overlooked in the industry. If developers or teams don't feel bad about what they are doing, chances are that what they are doing is actually not the best, the most productive way. But that is something that people hardly care about, in my opinion. It's something that is, that mostly people don't think about too much.
So well-being, Jira tickets, are there other specific things that we can measure that will reveal how productive our team is?
So there are obviously quite a few things, and I think one of the things that I find interesting and that quite a few people don't really know are the DORA metrics, and it's about how often you actually deploy. And when I ask people whether this leads to more productivity to deploy more often, it's actually something that they have a hard time figuring out. And if I ask them, well, what's the benefit of deploying more often? Usually they don't come up with any kind of productivity things. But in fact, if you deploy more often, more frequently, then you will identify the bottlenecks in your process. You will optimize them away, and therefore the process becomes better. So it's more like a lean optimization thing, right? Like in lean production, where you try to have a constant flow of things through your whatever it is factory. So if you try to get a constant flow of things through your pipeline, through your process, then chances are that you get more productive. And I think this is so very important because it's one thing that we can talk to managers about. So here is something that improves your productivity. It's actually easy to measure and just do it. And the other thing is, so that is something that I even might ask you. So what do you think? If you deploy more often, what's the result on burnout? So will it reduce burnout? What do you think?
I think in the beginning it's a disaster with a lot of troubles and getting things fixed. But if you come into some kind of flow, I think it can reduce a lot.
Yeah, and that's also something that a lot of people don't really get right. And there is data about that. So there are the studies, the DORA studies about that, and they actually say that it reduces burnout. But again, so you have the sort of the exception. So if I ask people whether it reduces burnout, they are not too sure. But it turns out that most of the people actually want to work in an environment where you deploy more often, which is interesting, right? Because if they think that this is the better environment, why isn't it so obvious that it would also reduce burnout? And again, that is something that we have to talk about, I think, more, that the environment that developers like to work in is probably more productive. And it's also something that I'm guilty of, because like 10 plus years ago, I wrote a book about continuous delivery. And the reason why I did that is because I felt that this is a better way. It would make me feel better to have a constant flow and to be able to deploy systems just like that. But in the book, it doesn't really say that. So I talked about, time to market, but I didn't talk about that. So that is one of the lessons learned, in my opinion, from writing that book and from talking about these things.
So it's time for a second version of the book.
Nah, it's too outdated. It's like legacy software, right? Eventually, it's beyond repair, and I would have to rewrite it.
So the book showed that things evolve. What do you think about Java evolutions and how the current version of Java is compared to older versions?
So I have to admit that I'm not that much of a technical person anymore. So I used to do a lot with Java and the Spring framework. But it's interesting, right? So it's 30 years now, and there were so many points of time in the evolution of Java when we thought that we had hit a wall, right? I mean, it originally started as a front-end thing with applets, then it became a server thing, then people said with containers and the startup times required and the memory consumption, it won't go there, but then the GraalVM came, and so on and so on. So I think it's one of the rare examples where something evolves constantly and therefore stays relevant. And if I look at the conference, I'm not sure what your feeling is, but there are lots of young people, so probably people younger than Java. So it's a vibrant and vivid community, and I think that's great, right? And I see a bright future.
I had a chat yesterday with someone who built a system to test education here in Germany, and he came from Python and rediscovered Java after 20 years, and it was a very pleasant experience. So it's nice to hear that that can happen indeed with an old language like Java.
Yeah, exactly. And so therefore, and I think it's the exception. There are not too many environments or communities that manage to do that. So I think that's really great.
So you're a speaker, but I guess you also will attend some of the other talks, specific topics you're interested in today?
To be perfectly honest, I haven't really looked at the schedule yet. I just arrived at the conference, and I'm actually more aiming towards the breaks and meeting people and discuss with them. And that is one of the things that I would like to recommend to people. So most of the speakers are more than happy to talk to you about their subject or other things. So if you want to step up to them and ask them something, I think that's a great idea. And they mostly hang around somewhere and are easy approachable, I think. So I would be thankful if someone steps up to me and asks me things about my talk or just says hello.
We also have the mentoring sessions for people one-on-ones. So indeed, the hallway track is sometimes more important than the talks itself. Okay. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the talk.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and have a great conference.
Thank you. Same.